Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Well, last week, I needed to pull one of my players out of the game for a minute.
For a minute.
And when I say players, I mean employees, because we're playing the game of business. Last week, I got to a point where I needed to take one of our senior leaders, specifically out to lunch to give him some feedback about how he was doing.
Wow.
Leading his team.
Wow.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm impressed about that because that wouldn't have been something you would have done 5-10 years ago.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
This is like a growing skill for me.
Yeah.
To start giving people like more direct and better feedback in a much more timely fashion.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it was really great. I mean, it was like I didn't want to do it in the middle of the hustle and bustle of like the day or just make it be an offhanded kind of comment.
Yeah.
It needed a little bit more like
legs, as I say, needed some more legs.
Yeah, a little bit more behind it. So I took him out to lunch and we had a super good conversation and I was like much more direct than I normally am.
That's
which is the thing I'm working on. And it's hard because I don't really love giving people, giving people feedback is there's degrees of it, right? Like there's feedback like you have toilet paper stuck to your shoe. That would be one level of feedback.
With snicker and pointing.
Observation.
Yeah.
But when it's feedback on something that someone takes like a lot of pride in or self-identity in,
it's really hard.
Yeah, you have to be really gentle with it. And for a long time, I was really scared to give people that more direct, kind of more challenging feedback.
Right. This morning, actually this very morning, right before we hit record, I was on the phone with a good friend of mine and involving another good friend of mine. She was trying to plan an event for her and really had a hard time because of a number of things popping up in her personal life, making the event really difficult for her to plan and execute. And rather than just calling her other friend and telling her, hey, this is what's going on, she had herself inside out about faking it. Don't say anything. I'll just call in a bunch of people to try to help. Oh my gosh. And you see people do all these crazy things just to avoid feedback, just to avoid talking honestly about how they feel about something.
About what they want.
What they want. Or that's what they need, even if it isn't just something they want. It's something they really need.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's obviously we've all been around people that give us feedback that's not terribly constructive or is trying to like make them look better
or there's an agenda attached.
There's an agenda. Yeah. They're just being an a-hole about things. Like
see, why do you gotta go there? I can't say that word.
I've encountered such people.
I can't say that word without doing it in the Austin Powers voice, which is a-hole. Okay, anyway. And we're back.
But like when, I'm just trying to kind of get my brain around this idea that like, why do we not like giving direct feedback to people or being more open about what we want?
Yeah.
And I think there's like layers there. It is it is part because we've maybe partly because the way we receive feedback and how
Yeah,
we
the
receive it, we
defense.
think like,
Yep.
yeah, like we put up a defense, so we think other people are going to put up a defense,
Right,
right?
right. My whole job is
Is
giving
giving people
feedback.
feedback. Yeah.
Yes.
So you're an
Well, I
expert
don't no,
at
no, no, I
this.
didn't say I was an expert. I did not say I was an expert. What I was actually doing is agreeing with you. It's not easy, and a lot of people, um it's funny.
Pay. And some people pay for it.
Some people pay for it.
I need
So
feedback, so I need to pay someone to give me some feedback.
sometimes they say they want you to give them feedback, but they really do not because 'cause they're afraid. Um,
Yeah.
I think too, like, before we even get too far into that, I think we should really talk about the reasons why we don't like to give feedback, because I think that those reasons are very different and they're not all one-sided. Like, for me, I think people avoid giving feedback sometimes with the very best of intentions because they're so afraid of hurting someone's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that could be, this isn't just a work thing, obviously. This is friendships, this is our family.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that where we just don't want to see them feel bad.
Yeah. And why would feedback make someone feel bad? Right? Like, what's the core of feeling bad with feedback?
Yeah, I think it's letting others down. Don't you? What do you think it
Maybe
is?
like, um, it could be like actions that have let someone down,
Yeah.
right? We had a whole pod a few weeks ago about
Hmm.
that. Actually, we had two pods about
Yeah, we
that.
did. Yep.
Um, but I think for me, one of the reasons like, I haven't liked giving feedback is because like a lot of times in my context, it's like challenging the quality of somebody's work.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
people have such a huge buildup on like their self-identity is their work output. So to me, it like gets into like challenging their own self-identity,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like, for example, um, if I give, one of our software engineers feedback about the software they made and how I think it's not good enough, they self-identified as
Hmm.
amazing programmers, that's challenging their
Self-identified.
identity.
Self-identified. Uh,
Right?
I'm
That's
gonna try to weave
challenging
that
like who
into a
they are.
conversation in the next week. That's a fun phrase. Yeah.
um, but you know what I mean? Like a lot of times though that feedback stuff, especially when it is about work, gets really challenging. I mean, actually it can happen at home. If
Oh,
if there's
totally.
like a feedback about like our
Oh,
kids, my
definitely.
wife might take that as like a
Mhm.
challenge of her
Yeah, her
worth as a
parenting.
parent.
Mhm,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it really quickly becomes about like who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's various levels of ego investment. I think that's one type of
Mm-hmm.
time where we see someone a little sideways or a little different and needing to be brought back, or needing to get that feedback to help them become more of themselves on their best day.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't think it's ego. Sometimes I think it's habits that people become so ingrained in, they don't
Mm.
realize, and then that habit starts to get overused, and it
Yep.
causes an imbalance
Yep.
of sorts. Uh,
The other thing I think about is um, that a lot of times if you give someone feedback, like they know it already,
yeah, they do. Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And what that causes is like a bit of a shame spiral.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't want to like put more energy into the shame. That's like another reason that I've typically not
Oh, interesting. That's
done
how you
feedback because
hmm.
right?
What
Why do you snicker and smile?
well, what I was just gonna say is this is at the root of the feedback is how the person that wants to give the feedback is processing the whole
I
situation,
see.
and then how they are interpreting the person's behavior. That is a huge reason that people don't like to give feedback, and it's right in there, right? Now, you're perfectly well intended. It's perfectly
Mhm,
well intended. That's the whole reason why it's so hard because I think we are oftentimes in the kind of conversations that we're talking about having right now about feedback, it's in support. In it's trying to be generous of spirit to share
mhm.
with someone how they are showing up in a way that is not maybe helpful, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm
So
not talking about those other times where we just want to give people feedback because we don't like them or we're annoyed and we want to release some
yeah, yeah, yeah.
energy.
No,
No,
we're not talking about like being mean.
no.
We're just talking
Yeah,
about trying to help.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So when I was in college, I went to art school,
Mhm.
and we uh we would have, so our art school classes were like, you they were like once a week, and they're 4 hours long. And so, like, for example, I had uh like 2D design class, right? So
Mhm.
all we would do is we would like do design, like graphic design
Oh my
in
gosh.
2D. Um, and the class was 4 hours
What does
long. So it's
2D
like pretty
mean?
much like
What
a
does
full day.
2D mean? You mean you just drew them?
No, it was like, yeah, we might draw things, but we might take like graphical elements like triangles or circles or text
Oh,
or
okay.
art, like clippings of
Sure.
photos.
Mhm.
But the whole thing was like, it was 2D because it wasn't sculpture. It wasn't three
Oh, got it.
dimensions. It
Okay. I
wasn't like, you
gotcha.
know what I mean? It was
Mhm.
only 2 dimensions. It was like on paper.
Sure. Okay.
Actually, so okay, sorry. That's funny. That's the art word for saying it's on
Oh, you
paper.
could have just said that. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Okay,
Hey, I'm
sorry.
just giving you some feedback right now.
um,
Uh,
but what we would do is we would kind of get like a lesson on design. We get, there'd be like a lecture kind of thing where the professor would talk about like a particular like design technique or element or whatever.
mhm.
Then we would get assigned like a project,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And and you talk about the project, and then we would go off and make our piece of art throughout the week, right? That was kind of like our homework
Yep.
was make
Yep.
the art,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We'd come back to the next class. Everyone would hang their art on the wall around in like a big circle, and we would all stand there, and one by one we would go
No.
and critique
No.
every single piece of art.
No. Absolutely not.
you would
Absolutely not.
you would not participate in
Not a
that.
chance.
It was it was so hard because not only did you need to like take, you had to learn to take your own
Yeah.
like feedback
Yeah.
and criticism. You had to learn to actually give other
No.
people criticism also. So this is like feedback on like,
Steroids. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a on high repeat
No.
because it was like every single week.
Honestly, that sounds terrible. How do you get better when you have something like that? I mean, how do you because isn't art subjective?
Not the crappy art I was making when I was 20. It was empirically crap.
It's like, well, you know that picture you drew of an ear? That's not an ear, okay? It's a
It was
box.
horrible. Yeah. Well, uh frankly, like the whole experience
Yeah.
was super good because
Mm,
um what it actually taught was like you need to have separation between your work output
mm,
and yourself,
mhm, mm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you are not this art. This art is a moment in time maybe of an expression of yourself.
Yeah.
Um but it's only temporary.
Yeah.
It will go away, and it's not you.
Yeah.
Like, and then the next one might again be like a little part of you, but it's not like the core you.
Right.
So it gave all these cycles on being able to uh both get and give this like critical feedback
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
our kind of work output,
Yeah. That's an
which was really good. Which
yeah, I like what you're
yeah, it
saying.
makes me really like kind of hardened against feedback for me.
Mhm.
Like hardened sounds like aggressive, but more like I don't care. Like
Right.
you can tell
You're not
me, you know, you
highly
can tell me the
invested that
pod
way.
sucks. I don't care.
Right.
Like what? But we made 100,
However
30
many,
of
and we
them
don't even
already.
remember what we
Some of them
talked
are good.
about.
Some of them are bad. I don't know.
We don't even
All
know
of
what
them
we
might be
talked
bad. Who
about.
knows? Exactly. But uh, learning how to separate yourself,
Yeah.
or, like your core from these particular art projects or these particular work outputs or these
Yeah.
particular things you do,
Yeah. Super important.
is super important.
I
Yeah.
think too what you're talking about, and we should probably even give a couple of other examples right now in this space because I think it's so good. What you're really talking about is how you're receiving feedback,
Hmm.
and how you learned how to have feedback with a lot of practice. And I think that's a really good way for people to get better at
Yeah.
receiving feedback is to ask for it frequently, and
Hmm.
um, and it doesn't have to be art. It can be anything. It can be, am I a
Yeah.
good listener? Like if it's something that's important to you that you
Mm,
want to be a good listener, you can ask for that feedback. Do you feel like I'm listening to you? Am
hmm.
I a good listener? What could I be doing so I would be a better listener? It's removing the
And
ego and the need to argue and the need to
yeah,
tell someone they don't perceive you properly. That's the big
yeah,
thing. And simply be in
I
the
got it.
listening.
Yeah, I gotta stop you right there because you used the most critical word you can use when asking for feedback. You said, "Do you feel
Yeah.
like I'm a good listener?"
Yeah.
The word "feel" totally changes the question.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody to like really think about how they ask those
Mhm.
questions because using a word like feel takes it from
Mhm.
like an absolute,
Mhm. And an
right? Like you
analytical.
are or you are not,
Mhm.
and yeah, and an analytical
Yeah.
to like a more connection word, which is
Totally.
is so much easier for the other peer. It allows the other person to actually give you real feedback because if it's like a black and white yes or no,
Yeah.
super hard to get feedback on
Totally.
that.
And you can't get the momentum
But
swinging when it's black or white because it's
yeah,
either on one end or the other, full stop.
yeah, any question that can be answered like yes or no,
Mhm. Don't
bad
ask.
question, right?
Don't ask
But a
that.
question like you can't say like when you ask it in the feeling way, you can't answer
Right.
yes or no
Right.
very well. Like I mean you could, but
Yep. Yep.
uh
Yep.
it just makes a better conversation.
I think, I do a lot of 360-degree assessments in my work, which is when you ask people to anonymously answer questions about you, and then all the feedback's gathered and it comes back to you holistically. So you can see how all these different
Mm,
groups of people around you actually perceive you. And I think the key in all of this is the perception, because so many people become very defensive when they get a result back, because
hmm.
they're even before the result is even opened, they have this defensiveness or this anxiety or concern. And I always say, whenever anybody is talking with you or giving you feedback, it really is, it is their perception of you. It is not if it's true. It's not
Hmm.
if it's yes or no. And that's the thing with all things feedback related. It's simply a person's perception, right? So being
Yeah,
able to ask them their perception without having the big, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong,
right.
and just listen.
So this goes into like let's flip back into actually giving somebody else
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
Because you hit it right there. It's you can go about it, in a more absolute way,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
you did a bad job at this,
Yeah. Or
or like,
I'm upset about this, or
you are
I have
not
emotion
listening.
about
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
But framing it in phrases like, I feel
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
you're not listening.
Right.
Like my observation
Hmm.
is that in meetings, you might not be coming across as a good listener.
Yeah.
And I know that you want to be a good listener.
Hmm.
So let's talk about how you can do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's ways you talk about wrapping cotton around the rock,
Yeah. Exactly. Before you
right?
throw it. I think,
So it's like, how do you soften it a little bit? But you don't want it to be too soft because I have been in sessions where someone's trying to get feedback and it's way too soft. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
yeah, if you're doing leadership development, as as if we're talking about in a business setting, there are whole speakers that will speak on how to give feedback to employees. And, the three things that you always hear are direct, specific, and timely. That's a very corporate scrubbed version of feedback, right? And it's cold. It's lacking warmth or connection when you say these things, although it's not meant to. It's simply meant to, if you can keep these things in mind, it'll help your relationship with the person because you can keep your own emotions to the side. Because sometimes you're having to give feedback when you're really pissed off about something,
Yeah.
and you are trying desperately to keep control, and that person's picking up on your energy all day long before you've even said anything. So they're already feeling defensive in a lot of ways. But being able to be very direct, I need to give you some feedback. It's my intention that this is for the good. This is because I want to be helpful. It is not because I'm trying to make you feel bad. And the feedback would be, in meetings, you have a tendency to run over people, cut people off, want your own agenda heard first. And I know it's because you're enthusiastic and excited. However, it's not perceived that way. And the reason I'm telling you about it now is it just happened yesterday again during that sales meeting that we always have. So like that would be an example, right? But
I feel like you just taught a master class in feedback. Like, were you reading that?
No.
That's like so good.
No. But even in our
It is your job, right?
Yeah, it is my job. Well, good. So I don't suck is what you're saying. I heard that feedback and I will take that. Thank you. But I think even with the people that we love, it's actually even harder, but you can still do the same thing, direct, specific, and timely. I think a lot of times we avoid giving feedback to people because we're really afraid of how they're going to react to us and that we make it about us instead. Sometimes people have a really strong personality and we feel that they may be stronger than we are, or that they don't want to hear about it. They're just not going to want to hear about it, especially from me. Or their instant reaction is always just so hard. I just don't have the energy to deal with it. So I'm just not going to say anything. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we'll avoid that kind of feedback, but giving feedback to those that we love is really a gift, or those that we care about. It's really a gift. And it isn't about us. I think that's the thing. Is like we have to try to make things not about us when we're giving that feedback, because that's when things go sideways, where the person thinks, listen, this is just you. This is what you think because you want you want the outcome for you, not me.
Yeah.
So it's very much about the energy that you go into it with.
Yeah. It's like, do you ever watch the Big Lebowski movie?
Yes.
Like the dude there's like a phrase that was like, yeah, like that's just like your opinion, man.
Yes. Oh, we should have named the pod that. That is a funny name. Oh.
Yeah, the part you just talked about is like the anticipation of a strong reaction to feedback.
Yeah.
That also just causes anxiety to not want to even do it. But you're right, like giving people feedback is a gift, right? And it takes an amount of courage to be able to give that gift.
Yeah. And it does get easier. It does get easier because people then start to recognize after you've done it a few times that you aren't doing it out of your own ego. And you're not doing it to be hurtful or harmful. That you do have that person's best interest at heart. And honestly, here's the thing. We haven't even said this, but I think it's so critical. Those that we love and those that we're closest to, they need our feedback. They need it. And if we don't give that kind of feedback in love, how are they going to know that something's hard?
Right. Like I want to be a really good parent, but a lot of times I can't see if I am or am not being a good parent because I'm in the middle of it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And feedback, good and bad too, right? We've been a little bit focused on like maybe like more critical feedback.
Yeah.
But certainly like good, good
Yeah,
feedback too, right?
definitely. Yeah, don't assume someone
Okay.
knows. Don't assume
Yeah,
that they
right.
already
Yeah.
know.
So, uh, so you can, practice, and I love what you said earlier, like practice small. Like,
Mhm.
don't go as your first attempt, just like with a huge bomb, right? Just
You have this
start with little
parenting
steps.
technique that I've watched for 20 years that I really think is dumb.
It's horrible. You've ruined the children.
Don't
Too
do
late
that.
now.
Too late. Good luck with all that.
No. All right, cool. Well, this is a fun episode, Melissa. I think you did a great job explaining
Well,
feedback.
and I
No,
would
actually,
just
I really do. Like your little example was like so good about how you like positioned it. So,
direct,
um,
specific,
I
and
appreciate it.
timely. Direct, specifically,
Yep.
and timely, and don't make it about you. It's focused on the other person.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.